Hi folks, John Cordisco here. Well, things are heating up in the U.S. Chess Championship 2016. Cream's rising to the top, and nothing's more the top in the chess world than a Carl Nakamura. My buddy is white and is black, former U.S. champion Alexander Shabalov. This is a really interesting game. Interesting game indeed. Now, I do want to say Carl's a little bit behind. He's a good point behind the leaders. Wesley So, Ray Robson, and Fabiano Caruana. He needs to win. Let's see how he does it. By the way, Wesley So and Fabiano Caruana both drew, as well as Ray Robson. So Carl needs to win this. Let's see how he's going to do. It's a Sicilian con. Like I said, Nakamura is white. Shabalov is black. We'll go through the opening here. I usually don't go through the book versions of openings. It just makes the video too long. Feel free to stop the video, of course, at any time. C4 for white, kind of a cozy bind setup. Knight C3, Bishop G7, H3, castles, Rook D1. Interesting there, though. It's the top move on the computer. Knight C6, Bishop E3. That's why he rerouted the knight. He wants him to go to E5, and that's a really good spot for that knight. Rook AC1, Queen E7, and a Bishop B1. Just moves the bishop out of the way. Still covers this diagonal. But now the rook is hitting the D6 pawn. Bishop D7. Knight H2, interesting move there by Carl. F5, Shabalov's going for it. So Carl just plays F4, knight has to move. And then queen to D2. So as you'll see, if this pawn's ever taken, you got the bishop. Got the queen bishop battery. Pretty good. Small advantage for white. Bishop E8. Knight F3, Rook D8. Now, believe it or not, slowly but surely, Carl is doing very well here. It's almost a 1.5 advantage on the computer at this point for white. Maybe you should have played F takes, then after B takes. But hindsight's 20/20. Rook to D8, E takes, G takes, Bishop F2. Queen C8, Rook E1, Queen F6, Queen E2. They're moving their pieces around, trying to get in the most optimal squares possible. Knight goes back to D8. Interesting there. And that's one of the top choices on the computer as well. Bishop H4 for Carl, forcing the queen to move. Bishop E7, losing the exchange. Bishop takes, Queen F2. Now, oddly enough, that's not that big of a deal according to the computer on losing the exchange. Actually, Carl had a good 1.5 advantage 5 or 6 moves ago. Now he's up the exchange, it's only a small advantage. Not sure, but computer assessments are really funny. Interesting might have been queen to D2 instead. Then after rook takes, giving up the pawn, knight moves, rook takes, queen takes. But after queen F2, queen takes F4. Now, oh, by the way, I wanted to mention at the end of this video is a small interview with both Nakamura and Shabalov on their opinions of the game. B3, this shoring up the C4 pawn. Bishop G7, Knight E2. Kicking the queen. The queen goes back to H6. What to do? What to do? This is where I normally just completely lose it when I play. Middle game, early middle game, middle game. I just can't formulate a plan. It's sad. Interesting though, rook C to D1. Maybe he feels that c-pawn's okay. He could very well try to disrupt it with this, and then bishop takes. Knight c6. Queen and b6. Alright, Carl's made some headway. That knight, excuse me, the queen on b6 is kind of a pain in the behind. Knight fd5. Now, they give this a question mark. And they do ask a Carl a series of moves he makes here when he puts the knight around his king. I don't think it's a question mark move at all. Not at all. Knight to h2. Now, it says it makes the game basically even. This is where I have a problem. Usually computer valuations are very, very not objective. They're very fair. But from a human perspective, I don't think that was such a bad move after all. Computer like knight e to d4, then after knight takes. And Carl explained why he didn't want to do that. So you can look for that video at the end. And he explains why he makes a series of moves and puts the knights around his king. Bishop f8. Queen takes. Bishop e7. King h1. Shabalov moves the king out of the way. And now he goes knight to g1. He just wants to cover these squares. Rook g8. Knight. Bishop goes back to e8. And c5. I think Carl's fine. That attack looks a lot more dangerous than it really is. Knight to g4. Can't take, of course, as we all see, because being check. Rook d2. Looks like Carl is slowly building up his position. Now, those of you who are wondering what would have happened after if c had taken. Knight f2 check. King moves. Queen checks. g3. Queen mates. Oops. After rook to d2, pawn takes. Bishop takes. We all see it happens if pawn takes. He gets two pieces for a rook. And then the queen takes. And this is where I think Shabalov stumbles. He's got something deeply calculated out, and I think he has a Carl. He plays queen takes d2. But it loses. Knight takes. Knight checks. King h2. Bishop checks. It's like black's king's in a lot of trouble. With a knight here, bishop here, rook coming down. You have to be precise, and Carl had it all figured out. g3. Bishop takes. King g2. Now, there's no decent discovery for that bishop. Knight e7 and bishop takes e6. And that's when Shabalov realizes the game is over. Give you an idea what will happen after bishop checks, queen takes, knight takes, bishop takes. Goodbye. So, well done by Carl Nakamura. Great defensive skills, I thought. And Shabalov just miscalculated. It happens. Anyway, folks, that puts Carl a half a point behind the leaders. He's making his move. 2 games in a row wins. Look for other rounds and other games from the U.S. Chess Championship coming up. Until then, I want you to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Who once again played enterprising chess. You did yesterday. It didn't work out. Today, this game was completely chaotic. Where do you think you went wrong?
I guess in the very end, and probably a little bit before that, I thought compensation was more than enough.
You felt comfortable throughout when you sacrificed the exchange?
Yeah, I was absolutely comfortable. I mean, I thought white cannot really do this, but that's how Hikaru plays chess. He takes material and he creates a problem for his opponent. His opponent need to prove something, not him. And well, when you decide to give Hikaru a fight on his own territory, it's pretty often ends like this.
When you sacrificed your queen, did you feel you were winning, or did you just need a move?
I forgot about checkmate on h7.
Oh, the queen takes h7.
I thought I have a move, and there were like a lot of choices. I can take on g3 with probably, with the rook in this case. But, well, unfortunately, checkmate on h7 was like harsh reality.
Oh, we did see that line, what we were analyzing as well. There was a moment you could have just taken on f5 when he took on f5.
Right, and no, I was feeling white is slightly better here, and I thought, I had such a nice shot, queen takes d2 that I prepared with my previous move, and apparently this position is not that
not easy at all.
Yeah, not easy at all. Knight goes to e4, and a lot of fight. Oh, nice perpetual.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Yeah, well, the opening obviously was clearly in white's favor, and then I think, Hikaru allowed me like a serious chances when he took this exchange. Instead, I think, slow approach would be like much better for him.
Enlighten us now that you've played a couple of these players. Enlighten us as to how really hard it is. Like, what is it that a 2800 player does differently when you're at the board? You feel the way they're playing that might be different from how a low 27 or 2600 player.
All this defensive move went like I couldn't guess a single one of them. Like after he took the pawn on b7 and then started playing all this knight h2, knight g1. It just like, obviously, clearly, very strong defensive moves. It just like didn't occur to me. The single move after that. So I guess that's what's different. They
defend like computers.
They're just thinking about the moves you don't think. Yeah. So yeah, nice win for Hikaru. He's in the chase. Well, probably a very exciting finish for the U.S. Championship.
Well, thanks for always being a fighter and so frank with us today. Hikaru Nakamura, Shabalov said it's a day at the office for you. What were you perceiving when you were playing the game? You won an exchange, but it wasn't so simple for you.
Yeah, I played pretty badly. Because, somewhere around move 15, I should just be winning. I think it's just simply winning. And, I probably shouldn't have exchanged on f5. I should have played this bishop f2, rook e1, build up the pressure. So yeah, once I took the exchange, it's still very good, and then I just blacked out. I gave it this f4 pawn for no reason. I just gave up the c4 pawn, not the f4 pawn, and it's technically winning, I think. So that was a very bad oversight on my part. And after that, it's just out of control.
The wild position.
Yeah, I thought I was probably. I thought I was kind of okay, but I was a little bit surprised by what happened in the game.
Did he have to give you this b7 pawn? He couldn't have defended it, or do you feel like
he could have defended it? But it's in the style of the position to just give it up and go for mate. What I'm going b4, b5, or a4. That
right,
takes
don't worry about it.
I think the king's a little bit more important than.
So when you were calculating this position, how much danger did you feel? Was your suspicion that you could really defend this anyway?
Oh, I was sure I could defend it. But it's very tricky, and I think the way Shabalov played was wrong. Because if you keep going forward, so somewhere around here, for the longest time I was going to go knight gf3, not knight hf3. But I think the problem is on this one, queen g7, rook e2, and knight d8 is very tricky. I don't know. I wasn't sure about this, so that's why I did the other way with the h knight, because basically after queen g7 here, he can get the same thing. Queen g7, rook e2, knight d8. Yeah, so rook e2, knight d8, queen c7, I think, bishop c6, rook f1, and I wasn't sure. I didn't see a way for black to win, and so I figured eventually I should be winning, probably. So I just go rook f2 and then at some point c5, and I think it's
You start to undermine his position.
Should be winning, I think.
Certainly not a clear, like, obvious way to play.
No, I mean, basically the point is that somewhere around like move 15, I mean, I already thought that it was almost time for him to resign, and then, I mean, I just got very, very careless. It's just really inexplicable. But nevertheless, when all was said and done, I mean, I found the right moves, at least at the end, this bishop f5 and everything, so it seemed to work out.
Even in that line with bishop f5, he could have the opportunity to take on f5.
Yeah, I mean, he has this knight f6, this knight f6 idea, and I mean, I don't know, I just assumed that somehow I'm better. I mean, at any rate, it's going to be a more pleasant endgame, and after being under pressure and not really sure what was going on, I mean, I'll take a slightly pleasant endgame over being attacked.
You were way behind a couple of rounds ago. Your rivals, your main rivals, have not been able to keep up pace and win games. You've won a couple of games. You're standing right behind them right now. What do you think about your chances moving forward? You have 3 rounds to go.
Well, I have 2 blacks against probably 2 most solid players in the tournament outside of Wesley and Fabiano. So it's
Remind me
who
difficult. You have to play.
I have to play Onishuk with black, and I have to play Robson with black as well. And then I think I have white in the middle against Jeffrey Zhang. So, I mean, I think I have my chances, but if I'm going to win this tournament, I'm probably going to have to take big risks. And I mean, well, we'll see what happens. Okay.
Well, we're happy to see you in the hunt. Certainly makes for a more interesting tournament, and look forward to seeing the rest of your games.
Great, thanks.
Hikaru, very much. Here he is, a very, very strong grandmaster, and he couldn't guess the moves. Every move for him was a surprise. You played the move knight h2, and you followed it up with king g1, and you followed up with knight g1. He said these defensive resources that you found, knight h2 and knight g1, were amazing for him. Tell us, how were the ideas born that you came up with these amazing defensive moves and huddled your king in the corner like that?
Yeah, I think the thing is I couldn't come up with a plan really to do anything. That's sort of how I came to the conclusion. Because I mean, the problem here is I have to keep pieces around the king. So for example, knight takes e5 here, I think is really quite bad. So for example, bishop takes e5, queen b7, and queen g7, and I don't know, maybe the computer will find some way, but king h8, rook g8, and I mean, I didn't like this sort of position at all. So I thought I had to keep pieces around the king. So that's the first objective. So I mean, unless I can maybe play rook f1, rook f3, but I also concede, you know, another knight gets d5 and then the diagonal opens. So I wanted to avoid the exchange, and then after knight h2. Yeah, I mean, the problem is okay, of course, if I don't go king h1, though, I mean, I just don't see how I'm ever protecting g2 in the long run. That's the issue. Like, I mean, the only plan I have is to go king h1, knight g1, or to try and go knight d4 and then put something on the second rank and defend the pawn. But knight d4 here, I think, was somehow was not very good. I don't know right off, but like knight d4, rook b8, queen a6, queen g7 even, and I mean, it's very dicey. Although maybe here I have knight f3 now, so maybe black should take on d4 and go like bishop c6 actually. Yeah, queen a6, knight d4, rook d4, and bishop c6. And I mean, again, maybe the computer will just say that I'm just stupid and it's just easily winning somehow. But I mean, at least for a human, it seems quite dangerous. So that's kind of, I mean, how conceptually I came to that conclusion. And then I thought, I mean, if I could just go king h1, knight g1, put a knight on f3, I could just do stuff on the second rank. And I mean, black's pawns are very nice. Of course, they stop me from winning right away, but at the same time, my structure is very solid on the king side. So that's how I came to the conclusion to go for this, really.
Thank you so very much. That was very, very insightful. I like very much how Hikaru was explaining. He needs the pieces on the board. One of the things that black has a problem with is this knight on c6. It's kind of stuck. It's in the way. We understand that black wants to play queen g7, but if you take this knight on c6 and take, for example, this knight on h2 off the board, then it's really easy to see how black is going to, you know, play bishop c6 and blast away on g2. And that is a really, really fine conception.
Very
and
instructive.
Hikaru Nakamura showing why he's a 2800 grandmaster and one of the top players in the world. That is not